Hello, everyone. Welcome back to I See What You're Saying, the Disciplined Listening Podcast. I'm Michael Reddington, and today it is my pleasure to welcome our next guest, Matt Halloran. Matt is a storyteller, a speaker, and an advocate for genuine connection in an otherwise very noisy world. And he is on a mission to bridge the gap between people through the transformative power of listening. He is the co-founder of Proudmouth Podcasting company and the author of 3 books, including his most recent, Shut the F Up and Listen. And what an engaging conversation this is, as he shares plenty of personal stories and experiences, talks through his perspective, how he developed it, how he shares it, walks through how his book is actually set up in 3 different phases so we can all learn and apply from it. I want to talk about lots of different things, including the power of being quiet, his 5 different types of communicators, his 7 different types of listeners, how we often fool ourselves into believing that we're good listeners, and so very, very much more. It's a great conversation. I really appreciate all the energy that he brought, and now I'm excited to share it with you all as well. While you're with us, please take just a second to like the show, share the show, subscribe to it, leave us your feedback, leave us a comment. We'd love to hear from you. And of course, please check out our sponsors. Head over to humantel.com and enter the code INQUASIVE25 for 25% off their best-in-class online training to identify what people are likely thinking and feeling by recognizing shifts in their facial expressions and body language. All of that is over at humantel.com. I've done it myself. Please check their training out. For the professional interviewers, head over to certifiedinterviewer.com to get all your questions answered about the International Association of Interviewers. Who qualifies? What's the networking opportunities? How about the education, the meetings, the events? Everything that's there for you is all to be found at certifiedinterviewer.com, as well as everything you need to know about the Certified Forensic Interviewer designation. Who qualifies? How do you prepare? What could it mean for your career, and more? And while you're online, please check out inquasive.com. That's where you can learn more about the programs our clients ask us to facilitate for their senior leaders, sales teams, HR teams, and more, to teach them how to use strategic observation and persuasive communication tools in order to encourage people to share sensitive information under vulnerable circumstances in the face of consequences. We really appreciate you being here week after week. Thank you so very much. So now, without further ado, I introduce to you Matt Halloran. Good morning, Matt. It is great to meet you. How are you?
I'm well. It's nice to meet you too.
I appreciate you taking the time today. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. The title of your book involves 2 of my favorite things. I'm sure you can guess what they both are. But to keep it professional and to keep it between the lines as we get started, well, you have several quotes that really interest me, but one right out of the gate that I'd love to start the conversation with, and correct me if I'm not saying it right, is silence is where the creativity lies. It really struck me when I read that, and I would love to get started by asking you to explain that for us.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't understand the power of just being quiet, right? We're in such a unbelievably distractible world where literally everything is trying to get our attention. Being able to really just but get comfortable with sitting with yourself in silence is such a strong foundation that you can build anything you want to build on top of that. But if you're not cool with just hanging out with yourself, you're never going to be as creative, as successful, as powerful, as good of a husband, father, sister, brother, whatever as you can be. It all really starts with that foundational build.
Yeah, I would obviously agree. I'm very curious. How did you develop that skill within yourself?
Well, it's been really hard, man, because I got diagnosed with ADHD when I was 7. And that was back in the days where they just fed you basically methamphetamines, and those didn't work for me. And so being able to just be quiet and still has been something I've actually been really practicing since I was about 17 years old. I'm 52 now. I now crave it. But I think a lot of it is so many people, especially in the world of meditation or just silence and quiet, they think that they're supposed to stop their brain from thinking. That's actually not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to accept the thoughts that come in, deal with those thoughts when they come in, but then you have to learn how to let them go. But the super fun part is then you start chasing all of these different rabbits and see where your brain is going to take you. And again, that goes back to that quote that you just said, because that's where the creativity lies, right? Is you might start at this point, listening is in the same situation. Somebody might say this, and then you end up way over here after you use some of those things, either externally with a person that you're communicating with or internally in your own mind. And it's just beautiful, man.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you bring up the ADHD. So we're in the same age bracket, and I was diagnosed with it when I was young as well. And so we probably have similar crossover in stories there. But I feel like as my career developed, it's become both a blessing and a curse. The curse for some of the reasons that, stay quiet, pay attention, kind of get your work done when you're supposed to, all of those things. But I feel like, and I would be very interested in your experience with this too, being able to observe more. Like, if I can be quiet, what has been a curse in certain parts of my life becomes the blessing when it's able to help capture kind of more of the nuance and communication that's happening in real time in different places all at once. And I feel like, to your point, until we get comfortable not saying anything, not participating, then it's impossible to unlock that opportunity.
It really is. I mean, one of the 7 types of listening I talk about is listening to learn. And in the idea behind listening to learn, and this for you and I was a nightmare for so long, because we had so much stuff going on between our ears that it was hard to be able to really, truly, truly listen. But when you learn that level of quiet, when you learn how to use that as a superpower. I'm going to chase that rabbit with you really quick, because I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think that, and I don't think that this is this way with all diagnosable mental illness. As a recovering therapist, I mean, I know people who suffer from schizophrenia who wouldn't say it's a superpower, who suffer from, massive bipolar, major depressive disorder, not necessarily think it's a superpower. But I do believe that ADHD is just, our brains are wired a little bit differently. And if you learn how to hone that level of attention, that level of hyper focus, and dude, I know you've experienced this, when we get into hyper focus mode, nobody can touch us. Like we are performing at a, NBA level, performance, where a lot of people are still, playing basketball like my kid did in elementary school, where it's that running and chasing and thing. But I think hyper focus, which actually can be a detriment if it's not activated at the right time, sure can be amazing if you learn how to get in front of it.
Yeah, and I'm here to talk to you and learn from you, but I'm going to make it all about me for 5 seconds. I apologize. I feel like I didn't start developing that probably until my mid to late 20s. And that was when, honestly, 2 things kind of started happening simultaneously. I was spending more time training martial arts, but I was also really diving into interview and interrogation and talking about having to really pick up on everything that's happening in front of you and remain hyper-focused. But it was somewhere along those, the confluence of those side-by-side learning opportunities and what was going on in my life at the time, that I realized that if I felt like I had something important to say, there would be another time to say it. So to let the other people speak, develop that. So along with you, I don't think I got there. I might not even be there, to be honest. But I don't think I even started getting on the path there until much later in what most people would call early adulthood. But I was probably still an adolescent.
Yeah. Well, talking about the whole idea of interrogation or asking questions and those massive interviewing skills, this is what you're already doing, as a podcast host. This is what I've done like 1,000 times on podcasts too. It's unbelievable. What I have found is when I'm listening with intention, what I call engaged listening, it changes the whole freaking thing, dude, where I literally don't need to say as much, because the guest is just, I'm giving them the space to give us gold. And you can do this while you're interviewing for a job or interviewing somebody for a job, when you're trying to find out, getting information from somebody, right? It's unbelievable how quickly people will give you the information if you give them the space to give you the information. Most of us are just there. We're talking at people, and people are listening to respond, not listening to listen. And I know you've learned this. There are those subtleties in pace, pentameter, volume, inflection that tell you everything that you need to know about the person you're sitting across from. So.
Oh yeah, they'll tell you as long as you're willing to look and to listen. And again, this is my word, but I would look, well, not my word. Like I'm sure plenty of other people use it, but the way I look at it, you talk about listening with engagement or listening with intention. Mm-hmm. For me, I find that it's much easier to do this when I have an outcome in mind. So, and it doesn't have to be like myopic, like I want Matt to say or do this. But if I'm looking to build a relationship, if I'm looking to create a business partnership, if there's something down the road that we're looking to get to, then if I use that as the motivation to listen and to let the conversation come to me, I'll be much more successful. But if I find myself in a conversation where I don't have that outcome or future state or next phase, then it's easier to trip and fall over some of these other obstacles.
Well, all men, brother. I mean, I'm right there. That I agree with that 1,000,000%. And that's why engaged listening is so different than active listening. Active listening is just like, it's performative, right? And I hate that. It drives me crazy. And so, oh, okay, right. That's fine. And there's a time and a place for that. But if you don't have that philosophical underpinning, that intention, that desire for engagement, then it is really very empty listening. And I say that, and I haven't made a lot of friends with this, that I think active listening is just empty listening because you're not actually trying to do anything with it. And I'm not talking about trying to manipulate people or anything along those lines, but I love the idea of going into a conversation, especially a professional conversation, a relational conversation, something that you want to build something with somebody with specific intention. Because if you don't, what are you doing there? Like, a lot of us consider ourselves as professionals, but we don't ever practice. And this is something that drives me crazy. I talk to podcasters all the time, all day long. That's my job. And very few of them go into a podcast. They haven't warmed up. They haven't practiced. They don't know what the hell they're going to talk about. They think that just because they're good at conversation, they can have a great show. It's the same thing with listening, dude. He's like, I listen all the time. No, you hear all the time. That's a totally different thing, bro, than it is if you're, intentionally focused in listening. I really nerd out about this. I love it so much. It's so much fun for me. To go out and practice it. I actually seek opportunities to practice all of these different types of listening more than I probably should, because like my wife and I will go out and she's like, you didn't say anything. No, I didn't. And the funny thing is when you don't say anything, they generally remember you a lot more for the fact that you were there to consume their brilliance than it is if you are trying to give them brilliance, right? There is an opportunity for that, but generally, most of the time, when you think it's the right time, it's not.
Yeah, amen. And by the way, you might not make a lot of friends with your take on active listening, but you just made a best friend with your take on active listening. It is performative at best. It is certainly empty. It's a term that gets thrown around way too much, kind of all-encompassing. I was recently reading a book where people kept talking about, whatever, it's thrown around all the time, but I think empty listening is a great way to say it. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying don't do those things, because yes, if people think you're listening, they'll talk more, but performative at best. I couldn't agree more. And I to kind of piggyback on that, if I'm in a room full of people who think they're the smartest person in the room, and for the record, they could very well be much smarter than me. That's not a pejorative statement. Then the best thing for me to do is not talk. Because if they are the smartest people in the room, then I'm going to learn. And if they're not the smartest people in the room, then I'm going to learn what I need to know in order to continue moving this forward. So you've given me about 27 different directions to try to go next. You mentioned the 7 different types of listening, and I need to come back to that. But before we do, kind of on this active listening, empty listening track, I feel like there are ways, and I believe that I've read you write about this before. I believe there are ways that you said it just a minute ago. People think they're good at listening. People think they're good at having a conversation. And for the record, there's been days where I thought I was good at it and wasn't. So once again, man crawls into glass house and gathers big stones. But what are some of the ways that people fool themselves into thinking that they're good listeners when in reality, they're not?
So it really is the foundation of listening, listening to respond instead of listening to listen. So this is a huge component of everything, that I wrote in the book and that I try to teach as much as possible. So somebody's saying something, right? And you're leaning in, right? It's one of those lean in moments. But they said something at about 1:20 into their discussion, but they keep talking for another minute and a half. Your brain is going to only be able to hold on to what happened at 1:20, and you just lost 1:30 of probably some of the greatest things that could have answered the question, by the way, that you were going to ask to look intelligent or show that you were listening at 1:20. And so that is so incredibly important, is just to listen, to be present, listening to listen, just not trying to fix, judge, change, minimize anybody's experience. It's for you to just be present. And man, I cannot tell you how important that just little bit of shift left of center is for so many people, because they don't do it. And the other thing too is, I love your smartest person in the room thing. I am not blessed with brilliance. I'm not. And this isn't Matt being self-deprecating. It's, I know my IQ, dude. And I'm very self-aware. So I know what I'm good at and what I'm not. And I'm not one of those people who can walk into a room and, quote all sorts of crazy stuff, right? I don't have a high IQ. I have a very high EQ. That's just the way I'm built, right? And I tell a story in the book about me being with my family, and full disclosure, at the time I had no idea the difference between lightning and thunder, right? Because I was a philosophy major in undergrad. I took like one science class, and science was not what I was raised on. I was raised in a very, very hyper-religious family, so everything, God was the answer, and I just took things for granted, right? And we were watching the movie Thor, and I was like, why isn't he called the god of lightning? Why is he called the god of thunder? And my kids were young at the time, dude. And my wife, who happens to be a earth science, biology, ecology, and geology teacher, she's retired now, looked at me like I was, I had horns growing out of my head, but dude, I know I don't know everything, right? And this was a wonderful opportunity for me to tell my children specifically that, look, you guys might think I'm wicked smart, and there are things that I'm super smart in, but on the grand scheme of things, man, I don't know crap about anything, right? And I think that level of humility is a huge part of engaged listening, is going into things realizing that every interaction that you have is an opportunity to learn something about them, something about the world, or something about yourself. And if you keep that mindful, I think we can make a really big difference in the world.
Yeah, those are words to live by. Every interaction is an opportunity to learn. And unfortunately, our brains aren't really wired to learn unless we turn that switch on. And to maybe oversimplify it, we're probably, to get all the way back to like your 1:20, the next minute and a half analogy, we're not going to listen unless we give ourselves a reason to care, whether it's the outcome, whether it's the relationship, whether it's something. If I don't have a reason to stay tuned, I'm not going to stay tuned, because that's how our brains work. It's, blessed to use this again, the blessing and curse of being a human being. Yeah. But in the illustration with your family is a great one too. And I also love that is parenting. Like, okay, here's a situation where maybe I didn't have the right answer, but that's okay. Here's a situation where I messed up. That's okay. Here's a situation where I look silly. That's okay. Because then it helps our children feel more comfortable around us, especially when situations and problems get more serious.
Yeah. So I just got done at a keynote speech down in Florida, and they bought a bunch of my books, and I was doing a book signing, which, by the way, is just still weird to me, but I guess I just personally need to get over that. And everybody kept asking me, as I was preparing for this, well, what are you going to write in the book? And what I write the same thing in every one, is listening equals love. And that's the whole foundation of the book. The 5 types of communicators, the 7 types of listening, all the very specific, very deeply personal stories that I tell in the book are all because I want people to realize, and you just said it beautifully there, right? I'm going in with the desire to make a real connection. And I'm trying to make real connections with more people at my age now than I ever really have been in the past, because I realize that there's so much in this world that I have access to. Dude, I even try to have connections with my AI, right? It's absolutely fascinating that you and I, when we were growing up, dude, we always wanted to have, the big brain that we could ask anything to. We have that now. And it's unbelievable what it comes up with. But again, showing even that you're listening and that you're inquisitive and you're curious and you're trying to be loving, I think that's just, and maybe it's just I'm a hippie or whatever, I don't really know. But I think that listening equals love. And when you go into a conversation, if that's part of your mindfulness, yeah, that changes absolutely everything.
Yeah, and one of the things I listen for in all of these conversations is the title of the episode. So thank you for just giving me the title of our episode, Listening Equals Love. I think you just hit the nail right on the head. So thank you for that. And talk about our age bracket. I was just coaching a baseball game this past weekend, and I was talking to one of the other coaches because he was getting text messages during the game from a family member, and he was answering on his watch. I was like, man, if I was a little kid and you told me that, yes, someday when you grow up, you'll be able to talk to your watch, but the car doesn't come with it, I would have been furious. So congratulations to Elon Musk and Tesla and all of these advances. But until I get the black Camaro that talks back to me, or Trans Am, whatever it was, shoot me, I'm still upset. It's an incomplete set.
Yeah.
But you just mentioned the 5 types of communicators and the 7 types of listening. I can't let that slide out following up on it. So I don't want to take away from your book. Obviously, I want people to follow up and read it. So to the extent that you're comfortable sharing, can we start with the 5 types of communicators?
Yeah. So basically what ended up happening is this was actually in my first book. So the Shut the F Up and Listen is my third book. My first book was actually written for financial services professional called The Social Media Handbook for Financial Advisors. I did not come up with the title. It was published by Bloomberg and Wiley. They came up with the title. I didn't like it, but I wanted to try to find a hack, right? So a way for people to really quickly identify who they're talking to in order for them to expedite the process of communication, right? And these are whimsical. They're not wildly scientifically founded, but I think people will get it. So the first kind of person that you're communicating with, and the question is, how are you doing? So that is your baseline question that you're going to ask all of these 5 types of communicators. The first one is the skydiver. And so, Michael, somebody comes up to you and says, hey, man, how you doing? And they say, fine. And they yank that ripcord and, and they're out, right? They have no desire to have anything. It's just going to be colloquial. It's just going to be normal social norms. I'm fine. Everything's great, right? And then you have the hang glider. And I love hang gliders because hang gliders move through this whole system. And a hang glider, you'll ask them the question. And if you show genuine interest in finding out how this person is doing, what they do is they say, I'm fine. And then they very slowly, they'll circle back. And sometimes they'll circle back that evening. Sometimes they'll circle back in a day, a week, a month, a year, but they will come back if they feel that genuine connection. And then what happens is a lot of times when they do circle back, they become water skiers. So I live in Michigan, dude. There's lakes everywhere and almost every kid has to learn how to water ski. It's just a rite of passage. And if you're water skiing behind a boat, you're going to, generally when you first start, you stay in the wake, right? Because it's smooth there, dude, right? You drop a ski, whatever, you're having a good time going back and forth, kind of like a half pipe. But if you go outside the wake, it's choppy and you need to learn how to hold on. Because I don't know if you've ever done this before, but when you fall water skiing, not intentionally, it actually hurts.
Yeah, it's
and concrete. It's the same way in communication, right? So it's the opportunity of I want people to feel safe. I'm going to stay within these guardrails in my communication so that if they let go and they get tired, they're just going to gently sink into the water and kind of bob in place. So that's number 3. Then you have snorkelers. And this is where I think everybody should strive to become, because snorkeling is really cool because you're actually going to swim up next to somebody, right? Great interviewers are very good at this. So they're going to swim up next to somebody. And what you're going to do is you're going to be all looking at the depths, right? The ugly stuff, the beautiful stuff, the emotions, all of the things that a lot of people are a little nervous to talk about. And you're going to take a deep breath and you're going to dive together. Right? Professionals can hold their breath up to about 4 minutes. Most of us can hold our breath for about a minute. And when you're in conversation, I want you to keep those time frames in mind. Because if you're staying down for longer than 4 minutes, you might be making this person uncomfortable and they're trying to come up for air, but they don't want to leave your side. This is what great interviewers do. Great interviewers will keep you underwater for about 3 to 4 minutes, and then you'll both come up. Snorkelers are what I think people should go for. You're not afraid of the beauty and the fear and all of that stuff, and you want to do it with somebody. And then the last one is deep sea divers or scuba divers, which I think is pretty apparent. All of us have experienced this. Hey, how you doing today? Or, how are you doing? And all of a sudden they tell you everything. I think people can move from scuba divers to snorkelers, and this is not an either or, this is a continuum. But those are the 5 different types of communicators.
I really appreciate you sharing that. And I love the analogy of the scuba divers, especially for interviewers. And it's funny that you said underwater. When I used to teach interrogation and I would teach like the development stage. So they've told you I did it and they've told you a couple of times, but there's more and there's more people involved. And we got to figure out exactly how they did it and where is it now and how we're going to get it back and all that stuff. The way that I used to teach it was you got to keep throwing them life rafts, because if they stay underwater too long, they're going to drown. They're done. So yeah, you got to kind of let them sink, but you got to keep pulling them back out. You got to save their self-esteem. You got to show interest. You got to keep them involved, and then they'll continue to talk with you. So I love, again, my bias, because this is all about you, but I love that analogy. And I think it's cool too, how you started off with the air and then went, like, you started off high in the air and then ended up deep underwater. So the creativity that likely sprung from some moments of silence as you were working through that definitely shows. So I like that. I like how that all strings together. So now let's flip the coin. 7 different types of listening.
Yeah. Well, so this is a little bit, we could almost do a whole show on each of these. So I will try to keep this pretty high level.
Maybe someday.
Yeah, maybe. So listening to learn is the first type, because I do believe that that's the foundation for everything. And this is when you learn how to be quiet on purpose. We've all been in classes before where that's, the kid is always asking questions of the professor, of the teacher, interrupting, all of those sorts of things. But the story I tell in the book is actually when I was doing biomedical ethics training at a hospital system in Omaha, Nebraska. And we were teaching doctors ethical decision-making and how to communicate more effectively with patients, especially in end-of-life issues. So that was a huge component of what we did. And this doctor just starts screaming and saying, well, the patient was an idiot or the family was an idiot. They just didn't understand, blah, blah, blah. And he wasn't there to actually learn. And the funny part was he said the quiet part out loud. And we were in a room full of other physicians, surgeons actually at the time. And they were all thinking to themselves, because we heard them say this afterwards, like, dude, I was actually thinking that. But after I heard him say it, I realized how wrong that was. But I think this goes back to not being the smartest person in the room. I think that's probably the best way to understand listening, to learn is, if you feel you're the smartest person in the room, number one, you're in the wrong room. And secondly, you're going in with massive ego instead of going in being open and receptive to learn from other people. The next one is listening to hold space. This one to me is, oh, by the way, these are all intentions. So I'm going in to listen to learn. I'm going in to listen to hold space. And one of the best pieces of marriage advice I ever got, I've been married for 25 plus years now, is to ask my wife, do you want me to just listen, or are you asking me to help you solve a problem? And dude, that changed everything, because here's the deal, right? We, and I'm just going to kind of proverbial say that as a partner, a lot of times are problem solvers, right? But do you know how much pressure that takes off of you, man, when you don't have to solve the problem, when they're just processing the information and they just need to verbalize it, to compartmentalize it, and, to do whatever they need to do in their brain. When my wife says, no, I just want you to just listen to, be here and just to be supportive. Oh, dude, I take a deep breath and I totally relax. And I'm super happy to just sit there and be there with my wife or my children or with my friends, with my business partners. Right. I mean, it's really important to learn how to do that. And then we already talked about listening to listen, right? This is just just truly just being there to absorb, right? So you're not trying to learn necessarily. You're not just trying to hold space, but you're there to just be present. And the story that I tell in the book is a time where I was at Boys Town with this young boy, and we got to experience fireworks together. It was his first time seeing them. And it was a life-changing experience for him and for me. And the reason why it worked was because I didn't have an agenda, right? This is just pure listening. So I'm going to stop you there because I don't want to keep going too long. How do you think about those first three? What are your takes on any of that? Where's your brain at?
I dig them. And when you talk about listening to learn, just starting there, and the words I wrote down when you said that, where I really liked when you said, be quiet on purpose. Mm-hmm. And I love how you talk about if you believe you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Agreed. But even getting beyond that massive ego, generally the people that have the most difficult time learning are technical experts and senior executives, because they either believe they're the smartest person in the room or they've been told they're the smartest person in the room. So now we're listening to validate, we're not listening to learn, and we fall into all those things. And that doctor example that you used was comically brilliant. But that ties into like lowest common denominator theory. If you talk to 10 different people and all 10 of them didn't understand you, brother, what's the only thing those 10 people have in common? And again, to use youth sports as an example, I was recently watching a youth sports team where the coach was yelling at the team, I've told you all enough. You should know how to do this. If 12 people, regardless of their age, have been told how to do something and 0 of those 12 people are doing it, whose fault is it? Like, let's do the math. Yeah. Anyway, small rant off of that. Yeah. The hold space one, I agree. And that's something that I'm still learning. My wife may or may not be listening to this conversation right now, is not needing to solve the problem. Sometimes because it's not wanted. Sometimes because I can't. Sometimes because I think I'm solving the problem, but I'm solving another or creating another problem. Mm-hmm. So all of these, and listen just to listen, which gets back to that learning mentality that if we can't give ourselves a reason to care, we're not going to listen. So I appreciate you checking with me, but I think you're off to a great start, man. I love this.
Well, so number 4 is listening to build trust. And that is another one of those massive intentional things that I think we don't realize that we need to consistently rebuild and reinforce trust. And when you're going into a conversation with somebody with that specific intention, what you're doing is you're showing connection, right? So this again is that true scuba diver. You're pulling up next to somebody and you're about to take dives together. So the format of the book, just to digress very quickly, and one of the things that I had found that was very frustrating to me studying communications, which I have for so long, is people never made me really get the concept. Like they would talk about the concept and then they wouldn't really give me an example. So my book has 3 parts. So I talk about the foundational principle, right? The ones that we're going over now. And then I tell a very personal story about something that happened in my life. That, by the way, like my best friend, who was the editor of the book, he said, dude, I didn't even know some of these stories. I was like, well, yeah, it's because, not to be mean, but I don't tell these things to people unless they ask, and I'm usually the one listening. And so, I don't share a lot, dude. I just really don't. It's not that I'm a wildly private person, is unless you're asking, I'm not going to just give you that information. So anyway, listening to build trust. You brought up leadership, and I think this is wildly important because a couple of these are really big leadership techniques that I think leaders really need to focus on. 1 is listening to build trust. 2 is listening to persuade. And I can't tell you enough that when you're in this, when you're a leader, and again, let's just use the baseball coach who's saying, I've told you this so many times, and you guys should know this by now. CEOs of organizations, management organizations, they do the same stuff all the time. Why aren't you doing this? How many times do I have to tell you? Well, it's because 1, we haven't made that initial connection so that I even understand how you need me to communicate this with you. Because first law of communications, dude, is message sent, is not necessarily message received. And so you need to really look at this. But listen to persuade is also very, very important to understand that listen to persuade is about making a connection, not manipulation. One of the greatest sales books I ever read in my entire life is not a sales book. It's called Principles of Influence by Dr. Robert Cialdini. And it is the greatest book you can ever learn on how to be ethical and help people to get to do the things that's right for them. So that's listening to persuade. Listening to amplify others. So I've done over 1,000 podcasts. This is my day job at Proudmouth. I'm the co-founder of this organization that has done over 10,000 podcasts. But I love this. And this is where you use, concepts like redirection, rephrasing, and reframing. You're already doing this in the show. You're amplifying me by showing me that you're listening and showing your audience that you're listening. It's not really complicated, right? It's what you're doing is you're going to take something I said like you've done, you're going to amplify it, and then therefore people will remember what I said. It's a beautiful circular process. And then the last one is listening to engage. This is the one that I think everybody needs to practice the most, because everybody thinks listening is incredibly passive, where listening is wildly active and engaging. But this is where both people are in the same situation. And you've experienced this, your audience has been experienced. It's that person who's just so easy to talk to, that you're not talking too much and you're not talking too little, and you feel listened to, but you're also knowing that you're showing the person that you care, because listening is love, and that's the focus. So those are the 7 different types of listening. And I tell wildly personal stories. Oh, I'm sorry. And then the third part of the book, and I was going to save this to the end here, is I give you practice. And dude, this is the one thing that I really wish more people understood was, I'm not going to get better at any of these 7 types of listening or identifying the 5 types of communicators if I'm not putting myself in a position to practice. And so every single solitary chapter has something that I want you to go out and do and practice.
Love that that's the way that you wrote your book. You did a better job than I did. In mine, in the beginning, like, so what do you want to get out of this? Think about what you want to get out of this. You're actually putting in the practice piece. So congratulations. But if we don't practice it, it's like any other skill. It's going to fade away. We're not going to, or not only are we not going to develop it, we could just forget about it. Or to get back to a previous piece of the conversation, we could fool ourselves into thinking we're actually doing it when we're not. I want to amplify your Cialdini reference. If people are interested in connecting with other human beings and you haven't read every word Cialdini's ever written, then you're cheating yourself. Yeah. Press pause, go order the books, come back, listen to the rest of the conversation, please. That's absolutely well worth doing. And when I think about listening to persuade and making the connection, you previously had a conversation with one of my former teammates and good friends, David Thompson, on his Truth Be Told podcast. So listen to that conversation too. But when I think about the cases that Dave and I used to work together, we would get cases consistently with no evidence, multiple suspects. Everybody's already been interviewed. We're coming in weeks or months later. So we literally have to listen for people to tell us what they need to experience, then give them that experience, and then they will tell us the truth. And so the persuading wasn't threatening. It wasn't carrot stick. It wasn't what people would generally refer to as manipulation. But it was, okay, Matt, what do you need to experience today? I think I figured that out. Let me see if I can deliver. Hey, I got it right. Now we're talking about the truth and we're writing written statements. So I love that. And then at the end, that listening to engage versus that active listening. Like, I'm not here performing. I'm actually looking to engage with you and create this mutual experience. So I think those are great. I love how you tie them together. I say this as a compliment. I feel like there's a lot of overlap between them. Like, if we put them on a wheel, there'd be gradients and they kind of blend into each other. And depending on who we are and where we are, the right intention to have could be to switch, even based on in a conversation, especially within a group of people. But I like how you broke them down and how they can all be leveraged.
It was writing the book, which I'm sure you've experienced, is you write the book and then you have to rewrite the whole damn thing. And so when I was sitting down with my best friend, who, by the way, has his PhD in creative writing and he's a poet, he was like, Matt, I don't really see really fine lines or distinct lines between each of these 7 different types. And I was like, well, there's not. He's like, well, how are you going to write this? I was like, well, isn't that why you're here, dude, to help me with that? But there is overlap. And I think a lot of people think everything in this world is very binary. It's on or off or black and white. And you use the word truth, that I think is fascinating, because truth is wildly subjective, especially because of perception, and all of the different things that we carry with us from a baggage perspective really does change how we perceive reality. And that's another huge component of this idea of engaged listening, is it's not about you. In fact, I say that a lot in the book, is listen, Listening is not about you. It's about the other person. And you have to be able to check yourself all the time. And you are going to move through these 7 different types. And hopefully you're going to take somebody from, a hang glider and get them as a scuba diver. And if you shut the F up and listen, it's amazing how quickly they'll meet you there so you guys can experience this together. I'm going to turn the tides on you just a little bit.
Please.
Because I did listen to a whole bunch of your shows. And would you mind reminding the audience on why you wrote your book? And what you hope people will glean from it? Because, dude, we're simpatico with this. We both wrote books on listening. And I don't know when the last time you've actually talked about that on your show.
I don't think I ever really have, because the goal of my show is to amplify others, dude.
Well, tough nuggums, man. Spotlight's on you now. So,
well, I appreciate you asking. When we wrote the disciplined listening method, it was because I think a lot like you. Well, here I'm making judgments here, but through your life experience and the different roads you've been on, you had this set of experiences that you wanted to synthesize and share with people to help them be more effective engaging with others and developing relationships and outcomes. And I think my motivation was likely very similar, with the slight difference being, and I know you talked with Dave too, that coming from, I didn't just come from the background of interview and interrogation. I was a special education teacher, and then I was a customer service representative, and I did all these other jobs before getting into interview and interrogation. But all of these, without me knowing it, communication-based jobs helped me develop not just a skill set, thankfully, to the mentors I had and the education that I had available to me, but the perception and the ability to synthesize these techniques with the goals of connecting with other people to uncover hidden value in relationships and outcomes that oftentimes people at the end were like, dude, how'd you do that? And honestly, the answer was twofold. I was nice, or at least, and I listened. But then how do you teach somebody how to do that becomes the challenge. So I'm fortunate in so many ways, but I get to teach jujitsu sometimes. And there are times where I get a call in the day that the professor who's supposed to teach that day says, dude, I can't make it. Can you cover for me tonight? So yeah, I'll step up. I'll do it. And then I'll be driving into the academy and I'm like, all right, well, I didn't really have time to prepare, so I'll just teach this. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I do it all the time, but it's intuitive. I'm not sure I can break it into steps and teach it in a way that somebody else can do it. Looks like I'm doing something else tonight. And so for me, and I don't know about you, but part of writing the book was a cool learning process for me, not just expanding my scope on the topic, but also taking things that Dave and I might have done intuitively for our lives or careers and said, okay, whoa, let's put names to this. Let's put steps to this. Let's put processes to this. By the way, let's double check the science to see if this is actually good or not. If it is, it stays. If it's not, it goes. And so 20 minutes later, I might have forgot to actually answer your question, but I think that gives some insight into why I wrote the book the way that I did. And I appreciate you asking. Thank you.
Well, and so I look at books like yours, and I wanted to do something very, very different. In fact, my wife, being a science teacher and a scientist at her core, she kept saying, well, you need to infuse all sorts of research. And I was like, I'm trying to make a connection, an interpersonal connection with people, because that's how I learn. I didn't write a book for everybody to learn this way. I wanted people to say, oh, I see myself in that story and now I feel comfortable, or, oh my God, now I see how that works within this story. And now I'm going to go out and practice it. And the practicing stuff for me is like my favoriteest thing. And so I always like to do this because I've found that audiences like this. If you don't mind, I'd actually like to tell your audience just one thing that they can go out today to practice any of these types of. Are you cool with that?
Dude, this is your stage. I think we've got 15 minutes left to your hard stop. So you tell the stories, give the practice. We're here to learn from you, please.
So I was on a men's dating podcast, dude, which, by the way, was like, it was horrible. The guy had been married for 30 years and he's trying to teach Gen Zs how to date. And I was just like, dude, whatever, man. But so I used this example, and at the end of the example, he said, that's the best piece of dating advice I've heard in a long time. And I was like, what is that? And he said, when you go out on a date, instead of sitting across the table from somebody, sit next to them. And I was like, oh my God, dude, seriously? That's the best piece of dating advice? Anyway, so that's step number one. So what you're going to do is you're going to find your bestest friend in the world, your wife, your husband, your best friend, your kids, whatever, right? And you're going to go out to a busy place, right? And what you're going to do is you're going to have a pad of paper. Both of you are going to have a pad of paper, and you're going to sit next to each other in a booth facing the entire audience, for lack of a better description, all of the people, the other patrons. And you two are going to choose one person to focus your listening on. Now, you're not going to be creepy and staring at them. That's not the point, right? You're just going to sit, you're going to kind of head down and listen, and you're going to answer 3 questions. The first question is, what is the nature of the relationship? Second is, what is the desired outcome of the conversation, and what do you really think they're talking about, right? So those are just 3 very basic questions, and you're going to set a timer, and this is also very important. You're going to set a timer. You're going to set a timer for 10 minutes, and then you're just going to sit there together with your bestie, not saying a word, writing these things down. And then when the 10-minute timer goes up, one of you will get up and go to the other side of the table like a normal human, right? And you're going to compare notes. And dude, it is unbelievable how different your perception is from the person who you hold closest to in your life. And by going through this exercise, you're learning how to do a couple of things. Number one, you're sitting in silence next to somebody who you probably were coming to hang out with, right? So that's that whole getting uncomfortable with the silence, or getting comfortable in the uncomfortable of silence. And then the second thing is you learn how to focus your hearing. So many of us are so easily distracted by everything that's going on. When you do this repeatedly, then what you can do, and your ears are actually very good at this, is focusing in on one voice pattern, one specific environment, and you are able to just make everything else go away. I talk about this. I have like heroes in interviewing and listening, and Oprah Winfrey was really good at this. In fact, her guests used to say this all the time. When Oprah would lock eyes with you, the whole audience and the fact that 1 billion people were watching would just float away, right? And that was Oprah's intention, by the way. She went into those interviews with that intention, that desired connection. But that's just one of those super, super easy things that you can go out into the world today. You're listening to this podcast, you're going to get coffee with your bud. Try this. One, it's going to deepen your relationship with that other person. 1, 2, you're going to learn so much about the other person by what they hear. It's unbelievable. And it's a great way to do something different instead of always doing the same thing, going out and you can do this in a bar, you can do this at a coffee shop, you can do this at the airport, a train station, wherever you want to go. It just needs to be busy. What do you think?
I dig it. And think about how many people say they like to people watch.
Yeah.
So now you're operationalizing your people watching. So instead of doing it for mindless entertainment, now you're doing it for a reason. And I do love the point you made. I love all of it, but the point made about much about whoever you're sitting with. This might be the worst analogy ever, but it's almost like doing an ink blot test with somebody. Like, I see a car. I see a spaceship that just crashed. Let's talk about where we are in life right now. But it could give you a real, interesting look at their perspective, what they see, where they come from. And I feel also like we filter our observations through our expectations. And those expectations could be layered with biases and judgments and previous experiences and predictions and blah, 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 all of these things. But now if I can look at how you and I are sitting next to each other, we're doing this, how you and I look at what should objectively be the same thing. Now I can start getting insight into how you might look at other same things, opportunities, problems, issues we have to work together, which if I can keep that in my brain, now that should hopefully evolve how I communicate with you in future scenarios to achieve better outcomes.
Well, in the world of interviewing, right? In the world of interrogation, in the world of trying to get to the truth, you should be doing this all the time, man. Check your own crap at the door, right? I wear glasses, and you take off the glasses, I see the world differently. Everything that you perceive through all of your senses are filtered through every experience that you've had in the past, right? And when you learn what those are, and the first time I did this, I did it with my wife. And she was like, holy shit, that's what you got from that? Yeah. wow, I got this. And then, so of course I was a therapist. So we're diving in super deep on all of that sort of stuff. But what she said was this, and did you hear this? And I was like, yes, but his voice tone was this, and his pace changed. And she was like, oh God, I guess I didn't really think about that. But this is why you have to practice, right? Even professionally, as a person who is a professional interviewer, right? You have to find these little things. And I liken it to basketball because I like basketball. It's like one of the only sports I pay attention to, but these guys are professionals. They've been dribbling a ball since they were like 3. They still go do ball dribbling skills every practice. They do shooting skills. They do, defending. They do all of the drills over and over again. But dude, you and I don't do that, right? I'm literally a professional podcaster. I mean, actually, that's not true. I practice podcasting all the time, but that's because I look at it as my profession, right? I do sales. I practice sales all the time, and not just in sales situations, right? And that's what's really important. If you want to take your own personal self to that next level, who are you? What do you do? And just ask yourself, when is the last time you freaking practiced? And if you don't really practice and you don't have a coach, not to be a dick, but you're really not a professional.
All fair points. And the fundamentals win. In sports and in life, the fundamentals, that's why they're called the fundamentals, by the way.
Yeah,
and
totally.
The people who look like they can do a lot of the fancy stuff eventually got there because of how well they could execute the fundamentals, which became muscle memory, which allowed them to dedicate their brain cells to newer, more advanced things. So yeah, the fundamentals win for sure. And that's a really great point about creating opportunities to practice. We're presented with those all the time. And there's a story that I tell when I teach where I did the opposite. I'd come back from a trip and my neighbor, who's since passed away, was at the local bar and he asked me if I wanted to meet him for a drink. And he was like the get out of jail free card with my wife because he was in his 80s and we were really close. So if Chuck says, meet me for a drink, she's going to say yes. So she gives me permission. I go. And this is the bridge version of the story. But my whole attitude that night was I'm not talking to anybody not named Chuck. I've been talking for 3 days. I just got off an airplane. There's nobody else here I'm interested in having a conversation with. So I sit there and a woman brings her husband to the fire station that they convert into a craft brewery. She brings her husband all the way across this place to introduce him to Chuck and I. And like, I won't tell you the whole story just for time, but she gave 3 or 4 very obvious opportunities for me to engage with their husband. And I intentionally shot all 4 of them down because I didn't want to talk to anybody other than Chuck. Then I find out the divisional sales vice president of North America for a German-based company with over 30 people based in Charlotte. Like she brought over a training engagement for me on a silver platter. But because I didn't look at it as an opportunity to practice, I looked at it as somebody invading my space with Chuck. I completely 86'd any opportunity to build that relationship and develop that client. So you're 100% right. If we're not looking at these as opportunities, any interaction, then we're not practicing. If we're not practicing, we're not getting better and we're not professional.
So I'm gonna go back to that because there's a huge lesson there in the world of listening that I think a lot of people don't consider. So you were hanging with Chuck, right? You go back to the brewery and you talk to the woman, the owner, right? And say, hey, look, you introduced me to your husband who I know I really wanted to meet because I think that there's some really cool opportunity there. But I just wanted you to know that I was there because my neighbor's 80 years old and he just really needs somebody to talk to. And I was trying not to take the focus away from my conversation with him. Would you mind remaking that introduction so I can apologize to your husband? Because I don't want him to think I was standoffish. It's actually because my focus needed to be elsewhere. See, this is that level of humility that, especially, I'm just going to make this gender-based because I think it's important that men don't do that enough. We don't say, I'm sorry. We don't say I'm wrong. We don't actually fess up to things because we are trained to have what is called an external locus of control, which is everything that is wrong is somebody else's fault or something that was done to me instead of where I'm at with that. So, Michael, with that right there, I mean, first off, you're not going to look like somebody who's a shill. You're not going to look like a salesperson. You're not looking like you're always looking for opportunity. You're showing that couple, that woman specifically, that you cared enough about the person you were sitting across from, that you were going to not take an opportunity to have the opportunity you were there for. This is engaged listening. This is intention. And you just talked about that perfectly. But now you have such a powerful way to go back and probably close more business than you ever could have closed if you would have turned away from Chuck.
I like that. Now, that story is roughly 5.5 years old. So where were you 5.5 years ago when I needed you?
Okay, it's definitely too late for that now, brother. But yeah.
But no, it's a great perspective. And as you were saying, I'm like, oh, that's another opportunity that I passed up, because there's nothing stopping me from going back and doing that, instead of just going home and being like, well, I missed out on that one, and that will be a cautionary tale I can share.
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. And I know you've got back-to-back stuff today, so I don't want to keep you past your time. For the people that have enjoyed this conversation, they want to continue to listen to you, they want to continue to learn from you, where can they go to find all three of your books, most especially your newest book, to connect with you online, to continue to learn from you and engage with you in your business?
Yeah. So matthalloran.com pretty much has all of the links to my socials. I'm very, very active on LinkedIn because that's where I am professionally. I do have Matt Halloran author, an Instagram account's pretty easy to find me there. I'm also on TikTok. But what I really, really love for people to do is to download the audiobook, actually, because I'm going to force you to listen, which is why, and I actually do the audiobook. Which as a professional voice person, it was pretty easy for me. I've got all the software and everything, but just going to Audible or to Amazon or wherever you get your, well, actually, I think it's technically only on Amazon because they make you do that. But download the audiobook, or you can buy the book, go to your local retailer. Sorry, I'm a small business, locally homegrown guy here. Go to your local independent bookstore. They can order it through Ingram Spark. And you might pay just a smidge more for it. But then you're supporting a local business, which we all need to be supporting a lot more. I don't think Jeff Bezos needs to be making any more money right now, but your local businesses do.
Yeah, I think he's probably okay for the foreseeable future. I think he's probably all right. Man, it has been a pleasure meeting you and talking with you. I really appreciate you carving out the time this morning. Thank you so very much. I was taking notes while we were talking. You've given me plenty to think about and go and practice as well. So thank you so very much for sharing your time and experience today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, brother. I appreciate it.
Matt, thank you for an awesome conversation. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your energy. I appreciate your commitment to sharing so much of your perspective and your personal stories and experiences along the way. Thank you. I love how you equated listening to love. Quote of the day, thank you. I think that's fantastic. And honestly, we might be on this island together, but we're together. I really appreciate how you equated active listening to empty listening. It's performative. We're acting like it, but what are we really doing if we're just exhibiting these traditional active listening skills? It's nowhere near enough. And I also really liked how you said early on in the conversation, it's important that we accept and deal with our thoughts before letting them go and moving on. So much great detail in that conversation. So many great examples. Your creativity really shined through. I appreciate it so much. Thank you. And of course, thank you to everybody that joined us for another great conversation this week. We really appreciate it. While you're here, take a quick second, like the show, share it, subscribe to the show, leave us your comments and feedback. We'd really love to hear from you. Thank you. And while you're online, give a quick look at our sponsors. Head over to humantel.com. Explore their online training library. Choose the program that's best for you and enter the code INQUASIVE25 to get 25% off their best-in-class online training to recognize what people are likely thinking and feeling through shifts in their facial expressions and nonverbal communication. I've done it all myself. I highly recommend it. Please, if you're a professional interviewer, head over to certifiedinterviewer.com. Get all your questions answered by the International Association of Interviewers. Learn the education, the networking, the meeting schedules, everything you can get from the association, but also everything you can offer to it and contribute as well. That's where you also can get your questions answered about the Certified Forensic Interviewer designation, who qualifies, how you earn it, what you can do with it, and so much more over at certifiedinterviewer.com. And while you're online, please check out inquasive.com. That's where you can learn more about the programs that our clients ask us to custom facilitate for their senior leaders, sales teams, HR teams, and more to teach them how to uncover hidden value in all of their high impact conversations every day. We really appreciate you being here week after week. Thank you so very much. Please stay safe, take care of each other, and we'll see you next time.